Hello, welcome back. In this segment, we're going to talk about the shortcut operators in Java and a miscellaneous topic that just didn't fit anywhere else, the final modifier. So the first shortcut operator we're going to look at is called a compound assignment operator. And it's very common that if you have a variable and you want to add it to another variable and put the result back in the first variable, so add some amount to what's already in a variable and put it back into the same variable. So you might think of this bucket as an accumulator variable, and you're going to throw something else into the bucket. So we can write this in a more compact way in Java, and we're going to pronounce it as plus gets. So write bucket plus gets amount, and it will do the equivalent of the statement above, the add the amount into the bucket. So it's combining the plus and the assignment operator. Each of the arithmetic operators has such a compound assignment operator, so you can write plus gets or minus gets, times gets, divide gets, or modulus gets. The next one is the increment and decrement operators, and these are for adding one to a variable. So there's an assignment statement hidden in here. We're going to change the value of a variable by adding one to it or subtracting one to it. And these increment and decrement operators come in two flavors, pre-increment and post-increment. So we're going to read these plus plus and minus minus. So we write a plus plus and plus plus a, and those look different, but they aren't. A plus plus adds 1 to the value that's in A, and plus plus A adds 1 to the value that's in A. So why are there two that are different? It depends on when does the adding 1 happen, and this breaks the rules of precedence. So when you do an add, you think of that as happening after the multiplicative operators that are in the same statement, but a pre or a post increment happens before everything else in the statement or after everything else in the statement. So a plus plus, there's nothing else in the statement to be after. So look at this other one down here at the bottom. B gets a plus plus. That means use the old value of a, assign that to b, and then add 1 to the variable a. So we are doing a post increment there, and it's post everything else in the statement. And if we write b gets plus plus a, that's a pre-increment, and we're going to add 1 to the variable a, and then use that new value in the rest of the statement. So a post increment and a pre-increment, and there's a similar one for decrement. So there's an a minus minus, or whatever your variable is that you want to subtract 1 from. And excuse me. Okay, here's the miscellaneous topic. The final modifier. When you declare a variable and you don't want its value to change, you can modify the value using the keyword final. So if you have a variable that's a double and you want it to always be 0.07, then by convention you use all uppercase letters, and for readability the underscore. So in your regular variables that aren't final, you're going to use camel case. That means you don't have any underscore character in your identifiers. But in the final, all uppercase and then an underscore for readability. So what does the final keyword do? Functionally, it means that you then cannot assign any different value to that identifier. I don't like to call these variables because they don't vary. They're constant. So you can think of them as variables that don't vary, or constant variables, which is kind of an oxymoron. But that's okay. What I want us to do now is to go into the development environment, into Eclipse, and play with the compound assignment operator, the increment and decrement operator, and this final miscellaneous topic that's kind of stuck into this segment because I didn't know where else to put it. So let's go and do that now. So here we are in Eclipse, and I'm going to close this so that I have more room. And I'm not going to show you this every time from the beginning, but until you get really comfortable doing it, let's start right from scratch. So I'm going to say File, New, Java Project, and then this is going to be play with compound operators. Hard to talk and type at the same time. You can put spaces in the name of your projects, but not in the name of your classes. So here's our Java project, and in the source folder we're going to say new class, and our classes have capital letters, and no spaces. I'm going to ask it to put the main method in there for me because I'm a little bit lazy, and I'll throw away these comments to get started. So let's declare a couple of variables to work with, some ints. A gets 10 and B gets 6 and C gets, let's leave C with nothing in it so that I can just show you something. Okay, if we want to take the value that's in A and add B to it, we could write A gets A plus B, and output the value that's in A, and it should be 16. Let's just run this and make sure that we have a project that's working for us. So okay, we have 16 now in the variable A. And what I'm going to do instead of this, I'll comment that one out, and I'll write A plus gets B. So we have the same thing. And what does A divide gets B do? 10 divided by 6, remember that this is an int division. 10 over 6 is 1. I'm going to declare a couple of doubles here. 3.5 and 12.1. So let's write a more interesting expression using a compound assignment operator. Let's write D2 gets times gets A plus B. Now we have a multiplicative operator here and an additive operator here. And the rules of precedence would make you think that when this expands, it would be D2 gets D2 times A plus B. So this is something that I didn't show you in the PowerPoint slides. If you expand this expression into this expression, you will have the wrong answer, because the precedence of the assignment operator, including the compound assignment, is lower than anything else. So you know that we do the assignment last. So when we expand that, we're going to have to expand it to include parentheses over here on the right. So A plus B is 16 and then 16 times 12.1. What is 16 times 12.1? Well, there's an error. What have I done here? Well, I'm not really sure what I did wrong, but it seems to be working now. So the point here is you do the combined assignment operator at the end with the lowest precedence, even if it's a multiplicative. The only time that you have this confusion is if you have a multiplicative operator on the left and an additive operator on the right, and the confusion might be that you want to do the multiply first, but you don't. And that's the same for divide gets and modulus gets. Modulus is also a multiplicative operator. What would happen if we tried to write C plus gets A? This won't compile because the variable C doesn't have a value in it. And if we're going to add something into what was previously there, then it would have to have been assigned something already. And Java won't allow us to use a variable that has not been initialized. That's kind of a safety feature in Java that doesn't exist in other languages. Okay, so there is the compound assignment operator, and you use it pretty commonly when you have an accumulator variable and you want to throw something else into. So this is like throw the value of B into the variable A with whatever else was there. Let's look at the increment and decrement operators. So if we write A++, we're saying add 1 to the variable A, and let's print that out. I'm going to comment some of these out so that we don't get confused about what the value in the variables was before we started. So A had 10, and if we add 1 to it and run it, then it should be 11, and it is. And then if we take that 11 and add 1 to it, we should get 12, and we do. So these are not different. So this is a post increment and this is a pre-increment, but the trick here is pre and post what? And there's nothing else in the expression, so they're the same. But when the expression is more interesting, when there's something else to do, when we print out A++, it prints out 10. So you might think, well, it didn't happen, but it did happen. It's just a question of when did it happen. So it happened after everything else in the statement, including printing out the value of the variable. So when we print out A afterwards, we can see that it did change to 11. So let's look at the difference between that and a pre-increment where we add 1 before we do anything else in the statement, and we have 11 and 11. The decrement minus minus A works the same way, except subtracting 1. Now, using these operators when the expressions start to get complicated, B plus gets A plus 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 A. Well, that's a perfectly legal Java statement, And we're starting to write code now that is a liability instead of an asset. So you can write code that is so bad that it's the only thing to do with it is that it should be thrown away. And that's not what you want to do. So you have to use these operators a little bit carefully. Let's go through this one and see what would happen. Increment A would happen first. Then that new value of A would be added to the new value of A. Then B would be added to whatever that is, and then at the end, after the assignment, increment A again. Okay, so don't do this because it's just too hard to see what's going on. We have 3 assignment operators in this one statement, and it isn't worth it to start writing code. Because you're so clever, you can get everything into one statement, and the best thing to do then is to throw that code away. And it's not pleasant when someone tells you your code is so bad we have to throw it away. Okay, the final keyword is not too difficult. This is exactly the example that we had in the PowerPoint slides, and the final modifier of this declaration says that this variable cannot be changed, and it has only one thing that it prevents you from doing. Suppose the tax rate goes up 0.075, which is the tax rate in Seminole County. This doesn't compile because you cannot change something that is final. So here's the twist. You can declare a variable that is final, and then you can assign something to it one time. So this is called an uninitialized final, and then you can assign something to it at one time. So suppose you wanted to decide at runtime what this tax rate should be. You can decide at runtime, make one assignment statement to it, and that will work. But if you then try to change it, it won't work. So this is a little bit tricky because we have the exact same statement. This statement compiles and this statement does not compile. That only happens in this one place in the entire language, that the same line of code will not compile when it used to compile. And it's because of this very special uninitialized constant that you get with the keyword final if you don't assign something to it when you declare it. Okay, so that's all there is to this. We had compound assignment operators, increment and decrement operators, and then the final keyword. Okay, just a short summary then. The shortcut operators can make your code a little bit shorter, and when you get used to them, it makes the code a little easier to read. And if you use them too much, then the code becomes more complicated and it becomes less clear instead of more clear. So you have to play this one by ear a little bit and make sure that you're writing something that other people can see and understand what you've done. Not just you can see what's going on. And there's something similar to the example that we typed in. That one's actually a little bit easier because it has 2 pre-increments and then a compound assignment operator. But don't use these more than they should be used. And we looked at the final keyword, which is used to the final is a modifier, so it's like an adjective for your declaration. It describes what the declaration will do when you want your variable not to vary, or you want it to be a constant. And we use all uppercase letters to declare those variables and the underscore character as the readability. So your other variables will all be declared using title case. No, sorry. Your other variables will all be declared using camel case. So a lowercase first letter, and then subsequent words will be capitalized. Okay, so this is good. We're getting there. These are the primitive parts of the language. I'll see you in the next video.